Ahoy there, plant lovers and YouTubers. It's Justin coming to you from the Big Blue Nation once again. And today, I was going to talk to you about Araucaria heterophylla. I guess it kind of sounds like aura. But it's the Norfolk Island Pine. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this, but I guess around the winter time and Christmas time, these beasts are everywhere. They're all over the big box stores, home improvement stores, and grocery stores.
Despite its common name, the plant is actually not a pine.
As you can see, my giant one over here, I decorated it up for the holidays. It does have really lightweight, kind of easy-going branches that will tend to sag if you use heavier ornaments. So you want to kind of get the lighter plastic ones. And if you do kind of any folding of origami, there's a nice gap in between the branches that will display your origami or ornaments really well. And it can also tolerate paper chains and popcorn strands, anything kind of lightweight like that. Now the smaller one, I've had this guy for about 2 or 3 years. You'll notice that some of the browning on the branches, that's really normal for a guy like this. These are a tropical plant. They're native to Norfolk Island, which is an Australian island. Right there off of the coast. It's kind of by New Caledonia, somewhere in the South Pacific Australian Ocean, down around that area. And that island really is known for its pines, i.e. the Norfolk, and its jagged cliffs. So it's a really beautiful kind of smaller island. And they were discovered, I believe it was around 1772 by, yes, it was 1772 to 1775 by Captain James Cook. I believe that was his second expedition that he kind of went over there by that island. And after he discovered this plant, it went into circulation not too long after. So this is kind of a newer kind of houseplant. It didn't hit the Americas till around the 2000s, maybe the 1990s, somewhere along there. But like I said, it's been a really popular plant ever since then. With light, these guys can adapt to a lot of different kind of situations. They like a really nice direct kind of bright light, so they would thrive in a southern facing window, but they can also get by with a lot of indirect light as well. I've had friends say that they give anywhere from about 2 to 3 hours of indirect light a day. So like I was saying, it would really thrive in a southern facing window, but it will actually live just fine in a eastern or western facing window as well. In the summertime, these plants really should be outside. They are from the tropical areas, so they can handle a little bit of direct sunlight. They like a lot of humidity. And unfortunately, whenever we get these plants and we see them in the stores, they're kind of in their dormant phase of their annual growing cycle. So once you get these guys, they will not need any fertilizer. They'll need hardly any water at all. You will need to give them some, but not as much as you would during its actual growing cycle in the summer or the spring or the early fall. About that time, in its most active phase of growing, I would give this plant probably 1 to 2 cups of water for this guy, and probably about 2 to 3 cups of water at least once a week for this guy. Just enough that you see excess water draining out the bottom. If your plant does have a saucer, you'll make sure you want to kind of get rid of any kind of water that is standing there, because these plants, they don't do well with standing water. They don't like to have their feet saturated for a long time. So anything that keeps them soaking wet, it will actually give them root rot. So I will give your plant enough water to actually drain out the bottom of the pot. And then after that, about 20 minutes, I would go ahead and drain any kind of excess out. After about 20 minutes, the plant's really going to take all that it can really hold. But during the winter time, you don't need to water them as much. If you're going to water your plant at least once a week during the summer and fall and spring, then about the winter time, when it's dormant, I would probably water it once a month, maybe twice a month at a full range. I say this because they are dormant, so they're not doing any more growing. They just need a little bit of water just to get them through and to keep them alive. Now in the wintertime, we also keep our houses really dry with fireplaces, radiators, and just, the heat. So these plants will dry out, and they'll actually get really kind of hard, crispy, dry needles and they'll actually start dropping. And if you step on one of these barefoot or with a sock, you'll know it. So either use a humidifier with these trees or kind of mist them. In the summertime, I'd probably do it about once a day, maybe once every 2 to 3 days in the summertime. And it will need a little bit of misting during the wintertime as well, or the needles will get kind of crunchy and brown and fall off. And as I was saying, now they will randomly start to dry up and lose kind of the smaller bottom needles, but that is normal. So if you do see a little bit of brown, that's nothing to be concerned about. But once you do start to get to see a lot of brown around the bottoms and the kind of newer needles, you do want to have a little bit of concern and maybe kind of give it more water or a little bit more misting. And as I was saying, these plants do well in a south-facing window. Temperatures, never ever let this plant experience weather below 45 degrees. It actually says online that they could probably do around 40. I wouldn't tempt that. These are from the tropical areas. Now they do experience some cold, but just not for a long extended period of time. So anytime it does get cold, you want to bring this plant in. Transplanting. This guy's got a slow growing kind of root system. I believe the roots are a little bit thicker. They're not nothing crazy, but they do kind of get a little bit thick. They do kind of grow slow. So you won't really need to transplant this guy that often. I'd say once every 2 to 3 years. And I really only would do that once you maybe see some of the roots kind of poke through the bottom of the pot or come through the top of the soil. Then you'll know it's about time to go ahead and transplant it. And remember, keeping a tree or any kind of pot or plant in a pot will keep it on the slower, kind of smaller size, and that will kind of reduce the height that this plant can get to. I believe the tallest plant, one of these that I've ever seen indoors, was at a doctor's office, and it was close to about 20 feet. So if it's given the right conditions and nutrition, these plants can get rather tall indoors, but I've never seen one over about 20 feet. Outdoors, in its natural habitat, they can get to be about 200 feet. So they can take off outside, but inside they are restricted with your pots. So, and if you kind of got a smaller space for these plants, an apartment or something like that, and you're wanting to keep it in its same pot without it getting too much bigger, instead of transplanting it, what you can do is actually remove the plant and take off as much of the soil or substrate that you can and start to trim the roots back. You can cut about 40 to 50% of the root structure off. You can cut up to about 3/4 of a root ball without actually doing a whole lot of harm to the plant. But if you're just trying to kind of keep it on the smaller size and kind of free up some space in the pot, just trim it back with a clean pair of pruning shears or sanitized scissors, and always make sure you sanitize them, because if you cut on anything else, you could get germs and transfer that from plant to plant. So anytime you're going to cut on one plant before you do it to another, sanitize your cutting shears as well. But once you trim that back to a height that you kind of want to see, you'll kind of get to know once a year about how much growing it'll do. You can kind of make a mental note and trim it back to about just as kind of close to the root ball as you can, and that will actually kind of give your plant a little bit more room in the pot. And then you can just stick it back in its same old pot, put some new substrate down in there, and your plant will be fine. Pests, there's spider mites. Spider mites are a beast with this guy. They will run rampant on there, and with these small kind of condensely packed branches, they'll really have a field day running their webs up and down there. So with spider mites, fortunately spider mites are one of the easier pests that you can take care of. You just simply take these guys and you sit them down in your bathtub and just kind of spray it off with the hose if it's during the wintertime. If it's during the summertime, just take it out back and use your garden hose and spray it off. All that kind of water will just knock it off, and I'd let it dry and then go back and kind of look it over, and if you still see some spider mites or anything, then you can kind of get your insecticides or fungicides in on that. But in nature, the plants have natural occurring rain that knock all their pests off and kind of keep them a little bit healthier. But since they're on the inside with us, they really do depend on us to kind of help them out with that. So I would just spray it off and give it a day or two, and if you see kind of more webs developing, then I would go ahead and spray it down with a nice insecticidal soap. And use that kind of conservatively. You don't want to use a whole bunch because that can kind of hurt the plant. I mean, it is made for the plant, so it would be just fine, but too much of any kind of chemical can be kind of a bad thing. Aphids. Aphids are another kind of problem that this plant does kind of struggle with. And if you kind of see down on the top of my soil, I've got a bunch of white pellets on there, and that's called gnat nicks. What that is just superheated glass that gets to almost kind of like a sand consistency. You put that over top of the soil about a ½ inch to an inch deep, and the pebbles will actually puncture the exoskeleton of any kind of pests and will actually kill the pests. So anything that's kind of laid eggs down in your soil, whenever you bring it in from the summertime and you're not sure if anything's down in your soil, you can put gnat nicks over top of your soil, and then anything that comes up after it hatches out of your soil will just die. And then it'll keep anything else from burrowing down in there and laying any more eggs down there as well. And anything that kind of gets down and crawls around on it, it'll die as well. The only bad thing about the gnat nicks is that it is really lightweight, so when you go to water it, if you're not careful, it'll move it around and you'll have to reapply it. Also, it does kind of have a lot of dust to it whenever you apply it, so when you do apply it, you really do need to actually wear kind of a mask or just take a washcloth and put it over your face and turn the fan on when you apply it. That way it will kind of circulate some of that dust and keep it from you breathing it in. But that stuff really is really good. That's really helped me if I've ever had any problems with aphids. Scale, I haven't seen the problem with scale. So if you've ever had one of these plants and you've known that it does have a problem with scale, actually let me know that, because I've got these two big boys here. I just got this one a couple months ago, right before the Christmas rush, and I really thank God that I got it at the time I did, because it is huge. And all of its leaves and needles are nicely intact. It doesn't seem to have any kind of gaping sides. It's not leaning, it's straight up. It looks really good. I do like these plants a lot. If I had to pick a top 5 plant, the Norfolk Island Pine really would be kind of up there on my list for me. I don't know the largest ones you've seen, but some people can do some really good things with these nice, long, and graceful kind of looking branches. Like I said, they do get really big, so they will need a little bit of space, and they really do kind of demand the attention of any kind of room that it's in. So, well, I hope you guys do have one of these, and if you do get one, just remember, after the holiday season, you don't have to throw it out. These plants can last a long time. I believe I've seen some where they say about 100 years, 120 years. So just as long as you're giving it a lot of TLC and you do your research on it, these plants can be one of your oldest living plants and one of your biggest plants too. Well guys, I guess that's really all I have to say about the Araucaria heterophylla, but that's the Norfolk Island Pine. Let me know, leave me a comment, let me know if you've had any kind of success or failures with these plants, and go ahead and hit that like button for me. Hit the subscribe button for me too, and hit the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime that I've uploaded a new video. I usually try to get one out about once a week. Alright YouTubers, you all take it easy, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Happy holidays guys.